Little did I know, being a teenager, most of the friction was me. Because being a teenager, I thought the world revolved around me. I had no idea that the world actually existed outside of Derral Eves. I'm here today because I have loving parents that were interested in my interests. They help facilitate my curiosity because I'm a very curious person, and I owe it to everything for their support. They've been supportive from day one of trying to help me understand who I am and my relationship with God, and also my relationship with others and what I'm meant to do here on earth. And I can honestly say, because of their mentorship and their friendship, I was able to discover Jesus, and I was able to discover a world that I didn't even know existed. And it led to doing things that people said that was impossible. And it helped me establish kind of a routine and a mindset that I could be, used in different aspects to really build up the Lord's kingdom. At a young age, I found that my parents were very supportive, and they were looking at where my interests were. And there's one story that really stuck out because it was real for me. I actually entered the third grade, and I had a teacher that just couldn't understand the way I would think. And she was an immigrant from Germany, and I'm not going to say that she had inclinations of the past history of Germany, but she's very strict and very rigid, and I just don't deal well being confined to a box. And our third grade class got computers, and it was back in 1984. It was the Apple IIe, and I was like ecstatic because I love sci-fi, I love Star Wars, Star Trek. I knew computers were the future, and I just couldn't wait to really just consume it. And we went into the computer lab, and she would say, "Okay, class, everyone turn on the computers." And those computers at the time had two drives. It had the program disk, and then you had your application disk. And it would take a while to boot up. It's like, just really loud. And I'm just fascinated, and I'm like typing, I'm trying to figure things out, and I'm just a curious kid. I was just, 8 years old. And the teacher would look at me as, "Stop it, Derral, I'm the teacher, you will obey my instructions. You'll do exactly what I tell you to do." Now, for me, I'm not a rebellious child, but I'm a curious child. I'm very curious about things that actually, that actually I feel like is going to change the world. And I knew that this piece of hardware was going to do that. And she go, "Okay, everyone in the class, go ahead and hit the D key." And we'd all hit the D key. And, for me, I can't just stop there hitting one key. I'd keep on typing and just trying to figure things out. And I was that really energetic, rambunctious little, 8-year-old. And she'd say, "Derral, stop it. I'm the teacher. You'll obey me, or you're going to go get in that corner." And it ended up where she said that enough that she put me in the corner. And every time that we had computer time, she would send me to the corner, wouldn't even give me a chance to actually touch a computer. And for me, I'm a determined little kid, and I'm a determined soul and individual. That's what God made me. And I wasn't going to let this lady stop my fascination and curiosity about computers. And so I went through my neighborhood knocking on a door, asking if they had a computer. And after 4 blocks of doing this, I found someone that was way down from our house that actually had one. And I was actually friends with the person that had it. So it was like the father that had it. And he wanted to be a computer programmer. He wanted to do it. And so he was like, when he wasn't at work, he was like learning how to program because he knew it was the next big thing. And so before he got home, he gave me access to his computer. But more importantly, he gave me access to the programming book of how to program an Apple II and how to really go through that. And for me, 8 years old, I was obsessed of learning it. And what happened next was really something that changed my trajectory as a child. and I knew where my parents stood. I went back to school, and the teacher says, "Okay, everyone, let's go into the computer lab." And we went to the computer lab and says, "Okay, Derral, I want you over there." And at that time, it was in the corner again. I had my friend kind of interrupt her, and then I changed out her discs, some special discs that I actually made for her, as an 8-year-old kid. And then I went to the corner, and she says, "Everybody turn on your computers and hit the D key." And she hit the D key, and across her screen it says, "Now who's the teacher?" And hit another key, "Now who's the teacher?" And she was so mad. I got kicked out of school for 3 weeks. And this is where my parents come in. And this is why I love my parents so much. They supported me. They didn't understand. Hey, he's curious. Like, give him access to things. He'll learn at his own pace. And my parents, my dad in particular, worked a lot to try to provide for a very large family. And he says, "You remember that Super Bowl commercial you really loved?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, the Macintosh one?" And he's like, "Yeah." Well, guess what? I just bought it for you. And it's like, today's money is like $8,000. And he didn't buy it for me, bought it for the whole family, but I had access to a machine that was far better than an Apple II. And so at 8 years old, here I was, playing around with a mouse and a graphical user interface. And it was like opening up a world. And just to tell you, like, my parents had my back, and they gave me the ability to learn how fast I needed to learn without creating roadblocks. And little end of the story, but it's a funny one. My dad comes home from work, and the computer's like all in pieces. He's like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "Dad, I can put it back together." He says, "You better." That was like a lot of money. And I put it back together, as 8 years old, but I couldn't find where 4 screws went to this day. But I still have the machine. It's actually in my office, and it's right behind my desk. And it's something to remember that, it's important to put your energy and effort behind something that has potential. And there's nothing in the world greater potential than your children. And that's why parents need to spend time in the things that they're interested in, not trying to convince them to be interested in what the parents are interested in. And my parents, from every aspect, they've never missed a wrestling meet, a football game. They were always there supporting me along the way. And yes, my teenage years, I had a hard time communicating with them, because every teenager has a hard time communicating with your parents. But that moment, I knew that they had my back, and whatever I needed to learn, they were going to help facilitate that, because we're here placed on earth to learn and to grow. And from 8 years old on, I just knew that if I had issues or I had troubles, that I could lead to them and go to them, and they would help make it possible that I could not be encumbered. I can go and learn as fast as I need to. In my younger years, I knew my parents had my back. However, when I became 12 or 13, I just didn't feel like they could communicate with me, and I could communicate with them. And there's like some distance going there. Now, I knew that they were supportive and they would give me opportunities, but there was some friction on that. I'm very headstrong. I'm very pointed in a direction. And sometimes I don't do a very good job communicating to them. And having them have someone like me, it's like a really big disconnect. And so entered in my biggest mentor that I've ever had, and I'm literally internally indebted to this man, is my grandfather. And this man connected with me and could hear me out. And whenever I would have blow-ups with my parents, my dad's like, "Okay, you're going to Grandpa's." And for me, I'm like, hooray. Like, finally, I can go to someone that will actually listen to me. And I went to my grandpa, and my grandpa would always say, "Okay, what we doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm coming to work." And he's like, "Okay, let's go to the kitchen. We need a bowl of ice cream." And I'm like, "Well, no, my dad says come to work." And he says, "No, he turns you over to me. We're going to have some ice cream." And then he would just ask questions and listen. And that right there, I felt like I had someone more than a parent. I had someone that I could actually communicate with. And I vowed at that time, if I ever have kids, I want that type of relationship with my child. I believe that my parents had so many different things that they contributed to my growth. They gave me access. They gave me things that I couldn't even imagine. gave me experiences to really learn from. But there was always friction in the sense of the communication. And so I remember vowing, very early on with my relationship, I wanted that type of relationship with my kids because there's so much friction. Now, little did I know, being a teenager, most of the friction was me, because being a teenager, I thought the world revolved around me. I had no idea that the world actually existed outside of Derral Eves. And so, and it wasn't until having a couple life moments of discovering Jesus and realizing what Jesus has done for us and being redeemed and putting on a path of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, that I discovered, what type of parent I wanted to be. And we wanted to have a big family. I came from 10, she came from 8. We're like, okay, we can do 6, because that's all we got, But the reality was, we started with a lot of hope, and there was a lot of discouragement, for just trying to get pregnant. We had several miscarriages, and anyone that's gone through that type of impact, my heart goes out to you, because I feel what happened, because we've experienced it. And for me, I wanted to be a dad that my children, when they have a problem, would come to me and not anyone else. They'd come to us as their parents. But I really tried to get at their level of understanding what they're thinking, and trying not to be quick to judge, trying to assess what's going on. And time is precious, but time that you actually listen, and I don't mean just listen with your ears, I mean listen with your eyes and everything that's going on. There's some things that are being communicated that could be addressed really early, that will either deepen your relationship or it will sever a relationship. My hobby, they says, hey, what are your hobbies? Like, whatever my kids are into. Like right now, I'm into basketball because the youngest, he wants to be a basketball star. And so we're going to a lot of games, and then, watching a lot of basketball, going to see basketball played. But it's like, I'm just interested in what they're interested in. And more importantly, there's a difference between just being interested in spending time with them, but actually interested in what they're interested in. So now, not being a basketball player at all, I know who's who. I know what positions they're playing. I know what they're into, because I'm finding passion in what they find, and we have something to communicate on. And now, it doesn't make my wife and I perfect by any means, but I do know, because the barrier is broken down, the barrier that my grandpa taught me how to bring down is down, and they don't feel threatened, because they know it could be the worst thing that happened in the world, and they know that I won't overreact. I won't say, oh, you should have done this or whatever. I will just listen and hear them out and connect with them on a level. And 9 times out of 10, they already know what they need to do. They don't need me saying it. They're already being directed by God. It's just more about listening and offering support. And that's where my parents come back in, of the support that they offered. Listening like my grandpa, but supporting like my parents, and my grandpa has made the biggest difference as a parent.
God is love, and love comes from God. In 1 John, the Bible tells us that God is not only all loving, but that He actually is love itself. The heart of the Parent Compass television show is to bring the transforming love of God to families everywhere. In every Parent Compass episode, true stories reveal family struggles and how their lives were radically changed by the love of God. Parent Compass, an award-winning television series, is completely funded by people like you. If you have been touched by God and you want to share God's love to others, would you please pass it on? Jesus tells us to go into all the world and to tell about Him. With your donation, you allow us to take this television show into many different nations and in many different languages, free of charge. And a portion of your donation goes to Parent Compass Outreach to feed starving children. Your gift does so much. To make your tax-deductible gift, go to parentcompass.tv/donate. That's parentcompass.tv/donate. And thank you for sending love and hope around the world.